Dear students, welcome to iTTV's lesson of Biology Form 4. My name is Gary and I'm going to be with you side by side throughout your journey of this Form 4 Biology. Now students, most of you have just entered into Form 4 and it's a all new world right now. Give away the ideas of your previous lower secondary. There's nothing else that seems the same now. In Form 4, life is totally different, and in Form 4 Biology, it's an awesome chapters coming up. So now dear students, you have already gained entry into the upper secondary. Now you're considered adults. So what we're going to do now is we're going to input into you several ideas and conceptual based topics. Now in biology, it's a big field. Biology is a study about lots of different diverse things. Now, the first thing you've got to know is, what do I need to know about biology? What do I need to have in order to study biology? Only one thing, interest. Now it reminds me the time when I started learning biology. For me, biology was something that was so unique, something that was so beautiful. Every time my teacher would give me a fact, I would go like, my goodness, that's awesome. Every time my teacher would give me a new idea about vitamin C's, about vitamin D's and E's and K's, about the bones, about the human blood circulatory mechanism, about how clotting takes place, about genetics, it was like mind-boggling to me. Every day was a new horizon, and because of that, I did very well. Some of my friends saw biology as a subject, as something that I've got to take into consideration because I need my A's for my exam. When they did that, life became quite miserable for them, unfortunately. Why? Because this is one subject that has loads of facts. You've got to memorize a lot of things in this subject. So, are you ready for all those memory? Are you ready for all those different concepts that are going to be so new to you? My one good advice would be to you, always ask questions. The more you ask, the more you'll find out. And the more you find out, the more you will understand and remember till your exams. Interest is the only thing, boys and girls. Make sure you enjoy. You did a wonderful choice in getting into the science stream. You did an exceptional choice in picking biology as a subject. But now remember, the next 2 years to come, you're going to learn about a lot of different unique ideologies, new concepts. You will be ready for it. And my role here is to assist you every step of the way. You don't worry a bit, because I will be there, and I will always be there to assist you right up to the end of your syllabus. So with that, let's start off Biology Form 4. Ready? The first chapter is all about introduction, so it's not much. Still relaxed, okay? The meaning of the word biology simply refers to the study of life. Biology is an investigation from the microscopic world right up to the biosphere itself. The biosphere refers to the planet Earth, where living things live. Biology helps us to better understand the structure and function of all living things and their interactions to the biotic and abiotic components of the ecosystem. Now, that last point that I read out to you, that's a classic biological term. You say, I don't understand. We don't understand why every time somebody wants to teach us something, they'll have to put some kind of bombastic technical words into it. So what you have to do is try to understand, and until you understand, don't move on. So what on earth is this study? Now what we were trying to say is, on planet Earth, there is a biosphere. The biosphere refers to the places where, on Earth, we find living organisms. Now, in the biosphere, there are living things. These living things can interact with each other, and it can also interact with the surrounding. Now, the surrounding is inorganic, which means the surrounding is probably oxygen gas, which are element, carbon dioxide gas element, light, which is a form of energy. So these kind of interactions are all studied, and the understanding of these interactions are given to us in this subject called biology. Now, where did biology start? Who started this subject? Now, there is no proper definition of where it started. However, I will give you a brief review on the history of certain great minds who studied biology. First, we'll take a look at a very wise man called Hippocrates. Then we'll take a look at Aristotle. Most of you would have known him from his exploits of the galaxy. And then we will take a look at another person called Galen. Now, back to Hippocrates. Hippocrates gave us the relationship between sickness and the environment. Students, Hippocrates is the great-great-great-grandfather of medicine. If you plan to become a doctor, after your studies, getting your medical degree in your hand, you will be asked to take an oath, and that is known as the Hippocrates Oath. Now, the Hippocrates Oath tells you, as a medical doctor or a medical practitioner, on your ethics, on what you have to do, what you can do, and what you must never do. Now, after you take a Hippocrates Oath, you are officially known as a doctor. Now, Hippocrates was the first man to tell us that any kind of illness comes from our surrounding, from the environment. And a better understanding of that over the years have developed to the modern medication that you have today. Now, if Hippocrates did not see a problem in front of his eyes and understand that problem, then we wouldn't have had the branch of medication today. Because Hippocrates was daring enough to ask question, why is it a person gets cold? Why is it a person sneezes and coughs and has running nose, mucus running out of the nose? He dared to ask those questions, and he was strong enough or willing enough to find those answers. And today, thanks to that, we have medicine. Next, let's take a look at Aristotle. Now, Aristotle, of all his exploits of the galaxy and astronomy, Aristotle at one point managed to create the world's first zoo. Zoo. How many times have you gone to the zoo? Now, why did they call the zoo zoo? You have never asked that question, have you? There is a reason. Z-O-O, zoo. Zoo in English refers to animal. In scientific terms or taxonomy, we call it as animalia or the animal kingdom. So, what do you find in a zoo? Animals. What better name to keep for a place where you keep animals than animal? So, zoo is actually animal. Try asking your friends around you. They might not know. So, what did Aristotle do? Aristotle created the first zoo. Why did we say he created the first zoo? Because he took an effort to study the entire life cycle of at least 500 different species. You see, these are all attributes that biologists need to have. You've got to identify problems around you. You've got to work hard in solving those problems. And thanks to thousands of years of advancement in biology, today we have textbooks where all the key ideas are written in it, and all we have to do is read them up in a matter of 2 years, what biologists took at least about 3,000 to 4,000 years to document. Next, Galen. So what did Galen do? Let's see. Galen showed that blood vessels contain blood and heart pumps the blood which circulates in the body. Now students, before the time of Galen, people thought that blood was actually a liquid that fills up our body, like how in a container water is being filled up. That means if you take a container and you move that container, you can hear sloshing sounds, right? But do you get the same sound when you move yourself? No, you don't. So Galen said, how come? So eventually, he found out that blood is not found all over inside our body, but blood is contained inside blood vessels. What a wonderful discovery, isn't it? Most of us find that out when we are at least 14 or 15 years old. So, with that, you already have an introduction of the history of biology and how things started up. Okay? Next, what we're going to do is, we're going to move on and we're going to see more about biological concepts. Now, before we carry on, ask yourself a question. Why am I learning this subject? Why? Because I love to? Because I know a lot about it? I don't think so. You took this subject because somebody out there told you that if you took biology, you have a wide scope of job opportunities. So obviously you want to know what are the job opportunities related to biology, right? Let's take a look. Below we have a list of the fields of study in biology. Now biology is a very diverse subject. Therefore, it includes branches such as biochemistry, biotechnology, microbiology, genetics, medicine, ecology, botany, zoology, taxonomy, anatomy, physiology, and bioinformatics. Wow, what are all these things we've never heard before? The only thing that we heard of was biologists. So now you know that biologists can be any one of those following, right? So what is all these things about? Biochemistry is the study about all chemical processes found in living organisms. For example, photosynthesis is a chemical process, respiration is a chemical process, deamination is a chemical process, the nitrogen cycle is a chemical process. A lot of these are known as chemical processes. Now the study of these chemical processes, the study of the enzyme action in it, and those are biochemistry. What is biotechnology? Have you drank yogurt drink before this? Have you had a cheese sandwich? Yes, the production of food. The production of food, the preservation of food, the betterment of food quality, all this is involved in biotechnology. The production of alcohol in medical sector, that is biotechnology. The production of paint, organic paint, where not even any dirt can stick on it, that is biotechnology. Biotechnology is a technology that is derived from living things and used in our daily lives. What else? Let's take a look at the next one. Microbiology. Microbiology is a study of all microorganisms. Genetics is a very key study in today's age. Among the many advancements in the field of genetics is something known as genetic engineering or the production of GMO. Have you heard of it? GMO is genetically modified organism. GMF is genetically modified food. Now you might not be that aware of it, but there are soybeans, there are corn which are genetically modified. So what we do is we take the genes from an animal and insert into this plant, and this causes the plant to be healthier, more productive, and more energy value. All this is considered genetic engineering. I might have diabetes, so my body is not producing enough insulin. So what happens? I need to harvest insulin and have it in a vial where every time after my lunch or my dinner, I can have a short jab. And that insulin will convert the excess glucose into glycogen. Now, that insulin came from where? Genetic engineering once again. We use the cloning technology of bacteria to derive these insulin enzymes. Incredible, isn't it? Let's just very fast take a look at the others. Ecology is the study of the environment. Now, I skipped medicine because you already know that this is where doctors come from. Botany is the study of plant life, whereas zoology is the study of animal life. Taxonomy is a method of classification of organisms. Therefore, if you would find or you stumble upon a new species, wow, that's a new species, you simply cannot name them as you wish. You will have to name them according to a certain branch or a certain methodology, and that is known as taxonomy. Next, let's take a look. Anatomy is the study of the human body. Physiology is the study of the movements of your body. So for example, if I have an accident and I break my arm, now my physiological processes are limited. I cannot move my arm anymore. So physiology is the study of the mechanism of our mobility, of how we move. Then comes something called bioinformatics. Bioinformatics is something new. Now, have you seen the DNA structure before? Those things that loop around. Yes. Now, bioinformatics is an example of a study which is quite new. Bioinformatics is a correlation between information technology or computer science into the biological field. So, if I want to study enzyme structures, I want to study protein structures, what will I do? I'll get a mathematician or a computer scientist and I'll ask him to design models for me. Therefore, having this model in my computer, it allows me to work at a higher efficient rate. So many beautiful fields of study, isn't there? Now, among the things that you can become if you have biology concepts with you, if you're strong in biology, you can become a doctor, you can become a geneticist, you can become a computer scientist as well. There are so many job opportunities out there. Pharmacy, veterinarian, dentist, these are all the medical sectors involved. Food technology, all of this is involved in biological field. So I hope you make the right choice. If you don't like any of those, then probably you're in the wrong place. But if you think that, wow, I love this, you're in the right place. So let's carry on our journey. Our journey begins with scientific investigation. Let's take a look at that now. Scientific investigation was first taught to you when you were in your lower secondary. This is just an extension from whatever you have learned prior to this. Scientific investigation starts off by identifying problems. This is the first step. A phenomenon is observed. When there is a lack of understanding of the phenomenon, this causes a question to arise. The question is then referred to as a problem statement. So students, if you see something happening around you and you wonder, why does that happen? You see, there is already a question. The moment there is a question, then this is known as a problem statement. So every scientific investigation first starts with a problem statement. Isaac Newton was the epitome of this. Why? He managed to observe an apple falling down on his head. And he asked a question, why does the apple fall down? Then he asked another question, why is it that the moon is always surrounding the earth? You see, why something happens? Question mark. That's a problem statement. You need that to start off any scientific investigation. So after you have identified a problem, what do you do next? Let's see. Forming hypothesis. Hypothesis is a possible explanation to the problem, which usually includes a smart guess. It is only a prediction that cannot be accepted until proven. So we go back to Sir Isaac Newton. When that incident happened, he asked a question, so problem statement was there. Then he needs to make a guess. What guesses can he make? Let's see. The earth is moving towards the tree, therefore the apple hit my head. That might be one. Or another one. The tree doesn't like me, so the tree threw an apple on me. That is another. Or, what did Sir Isaac Newton say? The apple falls down like all other objects because there is a force which is pulling it down towards the earth. So you see, I gave you three different kinds of hypotheses. All three are hypotheses, but two is not accepted at all. Why? You've got to make a smart guess. Something that makes sense. You get it? Good. So, you cannot accept a hypothesis until it's proven. How do we prove it? Carry out an investigation, right? Let's see the next step. The next step involves planning an investigation. Planning is important because it allows us to prepare for the investigation itself. The planning process includes the setup of apparatus and materials needed. And we will also have to determine whether the investigation is suitable to be carried out in a lab or in a natural setting. So say for example, we want to make a test on the amount of vitamin C in fruits. Now this requires a laboratory experiment. So we can do it in the lab. What do we need? We need fruits. Those are materials. What else do we need? We need beakers and test tubes and syringes. These are all apparatus. So when we get a list populated, we are planning the investigation. However, another experimentation, let's say the amount of pollutants in the environment. We can't do that in the lab. We will have to take cellophane tapes and place them maybe on our school gate, maybe on our canteen tables. So this requires a planning. You've got to plan first before you do anything in your life. Same thing with scientific investigation. So we have planned already now. What do we do next? Let's take a look. Identifying and controlling variables. Now dear students, variables are factors which can influence the investigation or the outcome of the investigation itself. Basically, there are three variables involved: the manipulated variable, the responding variable, and the controlled variable. The manipulated variable is a variable which is studied or tested. So the factor which we want to study is noted as the manipulated variable. However, the responding variable is the variable which depends on the manipulated variable and point towards the result of the investigation. The control variable is also known as the constant or the fixed variable. Now this is a variable which has to be controlled. Please note that this is a variable which has to be controlled during the investigation because this variable can affect the outcome itself. So we can just take a very simple explanation towards this. Let me give you a small situation, okay? The situation in your textbooks and revision books are all different, so I give you an alternative to that. So for example, we want to determine the amount of energy found in human beings or amount of energy found in a group of students, all right? So we want to see what are the factors that affect the amount of energy in students. Problem statement, right? I've got to plan an experiment. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to take 3 students and make them to run. I want to see who's more active. Okay? So what must I do now? I have to fix my variables. I've got to take into consideration my variables. Now, let's say my hypothesis is amount of food affects the activity of the students. Amount of food affects the activity of the students. So, what will I do? I will make sure one student does not have food. I'll make sure another student has a little food. I'll make sure another student has a lot of food. I am investigating amount of food. So I'm manipulating the amount of food. Therefore, it is the manipulated variable. Then what I do? I give them all a kick and ask them to run. Go. When they run, what happens? The one with a lot of food or sufficient food will finish the race first. The one without lack of food, the one who lacks food, he will come in second. The one with no food under starvation will hobble his way and faint halfway. So, I've already determined the factor which is responding. The factor which is responding is time taken to finish the race. However, there are other factors involved. What are the factors? Maybe muscle type. Maybe each student has different muscle type. So, the one with a lot of muscle will finish the race first. Then, this will influence my responding variable or not. So, what I do? I have to pick 3 students who has the same body size, same muscle type. I have to make sure all 3 of them have the same background. In that way, I've controlled a variable. So, we will see representations of all these variables when we look into examples in future. So, until then, I'll leave it at this explanation. Let's move on from the variables. Next, conducting the experiment itself. Quantitative experiments are repeated a few times to ensure a mean or average result is obtained. Students, there are 2 types of experimentation: quantitative, qualitative. Quantitative refers to values which you can measure or calculate. Time taken, volume of, and these are all examples of quantitative analysis. Qualitative analysis is what? Lime water turns cloudy. Purple becomes colorless. And these are examples of qualitative. So you do once is more than good enough. But if you are measuring time, anything that you are measuring, temperature, time, volume, and then you will have to use it again and again. You have to do the experiments a few times. Average means accurate. Very good. Next. This result will be much more accurate, like you guessed. Apparatus and materials must be handled carefully to prevent any form of mishaps. We don't want accidents to happen after all, do we? In some cases, a control has to be carried out to measure the results. At the end of the experimentation, the apparatus has to be cleaned and returned to its original place. The materials which are used has to be disposed of accordingly. Why are we giving you a set of rules? Oh sir, too many rules and regulations. I don't want them. Imagine if you had a very corrosive acid and you didn't follow the rules and the whole thing explodes in front of you. What happens? You might injure yourself or you might injure your friends. That is why you will have to follow the methods and the steps, safety requirements very, very carefully. We don't want accidents to happen. Now, besides that, there is a word control. Remember? Control. In some cases, a control is set up. Why do we set up a control? Because we want to differentiate between the control and other manipulated variables. For example, let's say I want to study the effect of enzyme concentration, on digestion. So what I will do? I will put albumin. Albumin is protein suspension. Then I will put pepsin. 5%, 10%, 15%, 20%. I will also have to create another test tube. In this test tube, instead of putting in albumin, I have to put in distilled water. So the manipulated variable is removed, is controlled in the control. Then I will be able to compare my results well. Understand? Good. Now, let's move on. Once an experiment is done, collecting data is your next task. The data from the observation has to be recorded immediately and accurately. And let me add on, students, honesty. A lot of students I see, they do this. They already know from the theory book that the graph will have to go up and then flat. So what they will do? When they do the experimentation, the results will be wavered. So they will just place the answers accordingly as they wish. Now this is being dishonest. If you carry on these ethics, future, when you move into the university and a greater level, you will not make it well. Because your idea of always trying to cheat your way will be there. Try to be honest. There's no harm done, right? Besides, honesty is the best policy. Let's carry on. Collecting data is followed by recording of data. Data must be recorded and presented appropriately to facilitate easy interpretation. Usually, graphs and tables are used. The units and scales has to be labeled accordingly. Once data is recorded, the analyzing process can start. Analysis and interpretation of data. This step may include calculations. Therefore, the workings for those calculations must be shown clearly. Relationship between manipulated and responding variable is determined at this point. Once this is completed, conclusions can be made. Making conclusions determine whether the hypothesis is accepted or not. Now, dear students, the hypothesis and the conclusion might be similar, and that is why if the question usually asks you for a hypothesis, in the conclusion you simply would write down as hypothesis is accepted. Now, because this is just the beginning of your Form 4 lessons, take this time, use this time well, because when you move into Form 5, you'll be rushing for the exams. You won't have time to experience and explore yourself. This is the wonderful time that you have. So I'm waiting eagerly to carry on this next following year, the entire Form 4 syllabus with you. So dear students, it's goodbye for now, but we'll meet soon. Take care.